Good evening, everybody. Lovely to see so many of you chatting away there ready for this evening. Welcome to the 2026 election hustings for the Connétable of St Lawrence. I'm Kathy Keir, and I'll be taking us through the proceedings this evening. We've got until 9 o'clock, so I hope you have plenty of questions ready for the candidates. Before we start, a bit of housekeeping. Can you please make sure your phones are on airplane mode because messages can interfere with the tech? We're not expecting a fire alarm this evening, so if you hear one, please follow the exit signs there and there. The doors are already open, so there'll be no problems there. The event's being live streamed on YouTube, so for those joining us online, welcome. You can access subtitles through a button at the bottom of your screen. And if you've got anybody you know that couldn't make it tonight, let them know that it'll be online later for them to watch at their leisure. So, your two candidates for the position of Connétable are, in alphabetical order, John Lefondre, Independent, and Tina Palmer, Independent. The candidates have decided that they'll each make an opening speech lasting up to 4 minutes, and they've allocated 2.5 minutes to answer each of your questions. And they'll take it in turns to be the first to answer your questions. So let's kick off with the speeches. First, John Lefondre.
Connétable, ladies and gentlemen, it really is a pleasure to be speaking from this stage once again. Now, even though she's not chairing this electoral hustings, I do want to pay tribute to Deirdre for all of her services to this parish. Politically, I think it's about 20.5 years, and that is ignoring her time in the Honorary Police. We both started as parish deputies in 2005, and since 2008, she served as Connétable. And I shall always remain grateful for her support, especially when times were hard. I'm a third-generation politician. My name is on that list of deputy of the parish, with my late father and my grandfather. The demands of politics have certainly changed since those times. The ancient and historic role of Connétable, which has been in existence for over 1,000 years, comes with great responsibility, and I am under no illusion as to how much work it entails. Having grown up in St Lawrence and served as its deputy for around 12 years, I am passionate about our parish community. I was responsible for the Millennium Footpath in Waterworks Valley, coordinating and working with volunteers of all ages, finding a role for everyone who helped, and also helped with the relaunch of the Parish Battle of Flowers back in 2001, carrying on helping until 2018. I was also treasurer for the Parish magazine for around 15 years. So I've been involved with St Lawrence, the municipality, and our community on a practical basis for many, many years. More recently, I served as Chief Minister in and around 2020 during COVID and some of the worst times this island has faced, with also the Brexit negotiations and the start of the 2022 invasion of Ukraine. Professionally, I'm a chartered accountant, which has served me well in understanding costs, achieving the significant savings we made, and looking at complex legislation. And that is part of the work that any Connétable will face in terms of that's what we vote on in the Assembly. Attention to a certain level of detail is important. A line or an absence of a line on the island plan can be critical. One time we narrowly avoided the inadvertent rezoning of land for 3,500 houses. Separately, just through asking the right question, I saved taxpayers around £700,000 a year as Chief Minister, purely because I'd read the draft law. That's the experience I bring. I speak fluent French, was the Jersey representative on l'Assemblée parlementaire de la Francophonie, and it was good to put that French to use in talking with the mayor of Barneville-Carteret when he was here on Liberation Day. It is an honour to have been approached some months ago to stand for Connétable. To be clear, the role is twofold. Firstly, to lead the parish, but also to represent it in the States. And I strongly support both of these roles. In my view, whilst prioritising the parish, an effective Connétable should also play an active role in the States, using their skills and experience to best serve everyone's interests. What is decided in the Assembly affects us here in St Lawrence, and that's where experience is important. We are incredibly fortunate to have so many supportive local institutions. They are the heart and soul in St Lawrence, and I will do my utmost to encourage and support these volunteers. We are in uncertain times, and for many life is difficult. And I believe together we need and can do more to support our community, tackling loneliness and promoting friendship and sharing skills across all ages. To use one of my favourite sayings, it is better to light a candle than to curse the darkness. Individuals can make a difference. Small initiatives can grow. Simple ideas can have a big impact. If you give me the opportunity, I would like to apply my skills and my experience to working with parishioners to making us a stronger community. And I believe I have the proven parish and political experience which can serve both our parish and the island. And I hope you'll consider me for your vote for Connétable of St Lawrence. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Just before we move on to Tina, for the people standing at the back, there are seats in the second row here if you want to come along and take them. Otherwise, you're going to be quite uncomfortable standing up there for 2 hours. Great. Okay, now Tina Palmer.
Good evening. My name is Tina Palmer. Good evening. My name is Tina Palmer, and I'm standing to be your next Connétable because I believe the role is about service, representation, and strong community leadership. I would like to wish our current Connétable, Deirdre Mesborian, a happy retirement. Deirdre is the longest-serving female Connétable and one of the only 6 women to have ever held this role, following Iris Lefevre. I would be honoured to continue that female legacy. Standing here tonight means a great deal to me because St Lawrence is not just where I live, it's my home. I am Jersey-born with family connections to St Lawrence going back generations, and this is where my roots are and where I care about the future of our economy, our community. I will not be seeking a role within the Council of Ministers because I believe you deserve a Connétable whose focus remains firmly on the parish and our community. Sitting in the States Assembly is an integral and important part of the role, and I will ensure the voice of St Lawrence is heard clearly there. Much of my work has been dedicated to supporting islanders across Jersey via my role at ASL Recruitment, to include skills development and community engagement. I have worked with young people starting their careers, businesses, including government, navigating workforce challenges, and individuals adapting to change through their working lives. Through my involvement with the Employment Forum, Skills Board, IOD, Chamber of Commerce, and Governor of Highlands College, and other key initiatives, I have worked closely with politicians, civil servants, employers, and community organisations. I understand good governance and how government works, how decisions are made, and importantly, how to challenge, influence, and represent effectively and on behalf of parishioners. After many years supporting islanders across Jersey, I now want to put something back into my own local community here in St Lawrence. Like you, I am a taxpayer, a ratepayer, and someone who continues to work hard every day. I understand the pressures islanders are facing with rising living costs, housing challenges, concerns for older family members, and younger people wondering how they will ever be able to afford to build their future in Jersey. Volunteering and community involvement has always been important to me, and I've been an active Rotarian for over 20 years, including serving as president. And I'm proud to support initiatives such as the Island of Longevity, who promote well-being and connectivity through the community. What I've learned, both work and volunteering, is simple. People matter. Strong communities are built when people feel they are connected, supported, and heard. That's why I want to improve communication, strengthen community connection, and encourage greater engagement at parish assemblies. Local democracy works best when people feel their voice matters. I believe parishioners can work more closely together to share ideas and identify efficiencies that deliver better value for parishioners, while always protecting the unique identity of each parish. Working collaboratively should never means losing your local identity. It should mean supporting one another and working smarter for the benefit of islanders. Leadership should be approachable, practical, and transparent. St Lawrence has a unique character worth protecting. If elected, I will serve our parish with integrity, openness, and clear commitment to its future. Because ultimately, this is not just about politics for me. It's about people and community. And it's about ensuring St Lawrence remains a parish we're all proud to live in. Thank you.
Thank you very much to both candidates. Now you've heard what they've both had to say, and it's time for questions. Deirdre has kindly volunteered to bring around the microphone. If you do want to ask a question, when it's your turn, please tell us your name and confirm that you are a parishioner. Then ask your question and hand the mic back to Deirdre. And when phrasing your question, please bear in mind that both candidates need to be able to answer it, so no questions directed at just one candidate. If we have time, I can come back to people who want to ask a second question. We won't be taking questions from other election candidates or from current states members. And please keep your questions succinct and leave the speeches to the candidates. Okay, let's get started. And remember to hold the mic close, like I am, so that we can hear you and so that the people online can also hear you. Does anybody have a question? There we go, Deirdre, just at the back there.
My name is Steve Pearl. I'm a parishioner. I would like to ask the candidates, I've probably heard the answer already by one candidate, but is there any intention for either candidates to stand for higher office? For instance, any of the ministerial sort of positions and even higher?
Thank you for that question. So first to answer will be Tina.
So, as I referred to in my speech, no, it's not my intention. I've stood for this role as Constable or Connétable, because it is about the community. I think we've got deputies and we've got senators to take those larger roles. And as a new person to politics, I know about community and I know about people. It's been my entire working life. So for me, no, I won't be. Thank you.
John.
Making sure this thing's working. Thanks, Steve, for the question. Short answer is... Should we start the one again? I think there's two things. Firstly, let's be very, very clear. Priority for me has got to be the parish. That's the role that everybody expects. But in my case, I don't think you can ignore, from my point of view, you cannot ignore the fact that the constables are in the States. And therefore, as been made very clear to me on the door, as I've been walking around the parish, people expect us to be using our votes and to be using our skills and experience where they're going to serve parishioners and islanders the best we can. Now, just to be very clear, because I was president of scrutiny for 4 years, just because somebody isn't an assistant minister and is on scrutiny doesn't mean that that time and commitment is going to be less. Scrutiny, if it's done well, actually requires a greater time commitment than being an assistant minister, depending what your skill set is. So from that perspective, what I will certainly commit is the parish absolutely comes first. That's my priority. It's one of the reasons I've come in to this role, looking at what I've done in the past, looking at what I think, as I see it, how the community needs growing, if that makes sense, and perhaps bring a bit of fun back into it as well to post the years that we've all been through. However, if you want the parish system to be protected, if you want the constables in the States to protect that parish system, then the constables have to step up to the mark. And that, to me, is if you are asked to be an assistant minister for the sake of argument, then if that skill set is commensurate with the time commitment that is available, then yes, I would take that role. But if it isn't, if it's not a skill set I've got, then I would not. I think I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. Well, there we go. Somebody there.
Simon Dowling, parishioner. Goods and services tax, should it be reduced, kept the same, or increased?
Thank you for that one. GST. John first to answer this question.
I was waiting for food exemptions, actually. Short answer, my preference is very much that any tax increases are the last thing on the agenda. And so my priority has always been, when I've been in politics previously, is about seeing if we've got expenditure we've got to make, is we make commensurate savings elsewhere. If you look at my leaflet, you'll see what we did do. The example I will always use is that actually literally day one, I think I was Chief Minister-elect, I was given a piece of warning that there was a £200 million lawsuit coming down, and we could have done something about that. There was an £80 million lawsuit coming down further down, which we could do something about. It had been sitting on somebody's desk for 3 years. Very, very easy decision to say, yes, do it. It took us about 6 months to get it in place. In the first, can't remember if it was 6 or 9 months, it saved us £40 million. So my priority is very much seeing what we can do if, so that's my mindset from the past. Depending what one gets asked to do in the States, that would be my mindset going forward, even as a normal voting member. So I hope that answers the question. I would very much prefer to see GST stay as it is. I don't think we've got the capacity to reduce it at this stage, I have to say, but I would not be supportive unless every avenue has been explored, and I think there's still a lot of avenues to go for any increases in any taxation that we have. Sorry, can I add one other thing, by the way, just in terms of taxation, because people may not be aware. There is actually reference to a liquid waste charge in the budget for about 4 years' time, I think, which is apparently going to raise £10 million a year. I've consistently been against that in the past. I would need a lot of persuasion to be supporting that in the future. I think it's a lazy tax, and I think it is, for me, taxation is about providing the basic services that we require, and the treatment of sewage, for me, is one of the basic services. I hope that expands on the question you're asking. Thank you.
Thank you. Tina.
I think we've got more important things to discuss. I think the 5% GST should just stay as it is, and I think we've got more important things to worry about. We've got cost of living, price of houses, we've got young people leaving, we've got elderly people that are dying from loneliness, because loneliness being the biggest killer. And I think if we divert our energies to look at anything at GST at this current moment, I think it would be energy spent well elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question down here, fourth row back. And then we'll go to the person with the stripy top behind after that.
Thank you. Jason Cronin, parishioner. I heard you talk about building a stronger community. So if elected as Connétable, what would you do to build a strong community, build a parish identity, and what would be your 6-month goal and ultimately your goal by the 12 months? Thank you.
Well, that's quite a lot of questions. How would you build a parish identity, parish community, and your 6-month goal? Is that it? Right, okay. So first to answer this time is Tina.
Thank you, Jason. Okay, so I think the community doesn't happen overnight. Communities are built with communication, and I think if we can improve communication, you guys know what you want from your community. It's not for me to dictate if I was elected. So I think we'd do lots of consultation. We'd open up the parish hall and find out what you'd like. But communication and connectivity, the coffee mornings that are held here are really popular. And I think we could connect the school to come into that so that the young and the elderly can mix together. But I think there's lots of initiatives. And in 6 months' time, I would like to see your page, Jason, have a lot more followers and a lot more engagement on it, more than just what's the weather and what's happening on the roads. I'd like it to be much more around us maybe putting on a fete or putting on something that somebody's having an open garden and being much more connected. And you can only do that with really good, solid communication. Thank you.
Thank you. John.
Yeah, that's a good question to try and answer in about 2 minutes. One of the things that I felt and have observed in my time working within the parish is that there isn't a one-size-fits-all answer to the question, I don't think. Because if you look at the community and how we operate at the moment, the requirements, or as it were, or the needs, can range from social, which is obviously important, and one of my wife and I's deep, dark secrets is that from time to time we have been doing dance lessons up here, and we're here for New Year's Eve when on that little group of people that come up and have a lot of fun. That is part of what I'll call bringing that community, that cohesion, about how you get it bigger, how you get it working more. It could be how do you get more people out if you go down to the kiosk on regular times, there are certain groups that meet down there and it tends to be older people, a lot of it around dog walking. If you go to, if I go back to my experience in early days, when we did the footpath in the Waterworks Valley, which was about 60 odd volunteers, that was a physical thing that we could set going. Now, I'm not too sure right now if I can think of a similar project. There's always maintenance and things to do down there. But that is actually finding, I think, some individual projects that will appeal across different areas of the community and then set that going. Part of it is a communication out to the parishioners. Would you be willing to help? Is there something about how we can actually communicate better? I had a query about could we get communications on WhatsApp or emails and things like that. That bit I'm open to exploring. I don't know what the whole data protection issue, etc., is around that. But I think the fundamental one is, on top of that, there are things around community and helping older people, and that's the loneliness side. And that is about if somebody is less mobile, has less access. So I suppose actually my top priority would be understanding, particularly from St Clement's, for example, what they do about their transport and their volunteer transport, and seeing if we could get that in place as a first priority, and because that then starts your building step up going forward.
Thank you. I said we'd go next to the person in the stripy top who wanted to ask a question. Can you put your hand up so that Deirdre can see you? Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Beverly and I'm a parishioner of St Lawrence. I'm actually asking a question with regards to the agricultural industry in St Lawrence.
Could you put your mic slightly closer so we can hear you?
St Lawrence has always been at the forefront of the agricultural industry within the island. So supporting agriculture in St Lawrence requires more than enthusiasm. It requires sound judgment, financial discipline, and the ability to make balanced long-term decisions that affect livelihoods and the future character of this parish. Can each candidate please explain what experience they have in making difficult decisions where there were real financial or community consequences, and how that experience would help them responsibly support and protect the agricultural industry and associated businesses within this parish?
Thank you. So that's what experience do you have at making difficult decisions and then applying that experience to the agricultural industry in St Lawrence? And first to answer this is John.
Thank you very much for that. In terms of what experience have I had in making difficult decisions, where do you start? I think, I hate to say this, the pandemic is fairly obvious in terms of both financial consequences, community consequences, literally life and death consequences, in terms of I don't think anyone ever expects a politician that they elect in Jersey to actually be making decisions that do involve conversations around triage, do involve conversations about what you're going to do and the impact it will have on the community in the longer term. So in terms of difficult decisions, I think I can say I've been there. In terms of the financial side of things, I've given some examples already. In terms of managing expenditure, we had to try and reduce the government growth budget by about 70 million. We actually, through team working and bring everybody together in what we call, if you like, a star chamber over a day, we achieved that. We got every department to agree to take out, in total, 70 million off their budget. And the comment by the Treasury official at the time, which was, because I don't think they were expecting it, was actually, wow, and B, there were no egos around the table. And so we actually worked together and achieved that. How you apply that to the agricultural industry in St Lawrence? I think it's understanding what exactly the issues are that the parish can help you with, or as a politician we can help you with the interaction with the assembly. So I don't know the exact details from that perspective. I know there's the agricultural support that has come through, and that I'm assuming from the people I've spoken to has been well received. But if there are particular issues that need assistance with, I'm very happy to have that conversation and work it through, because it's about understanding the actual problem before I stand up and start espousing on what I think the solution should be. I think that's the fundamental one. Understand it, work together, and see what the solution is. Thank you.
Thank you. Tina.
Thank you very much. And I would agree with John's comments about us understanding properly. Obviously, you guys are the ones that are doing it day to day, not me or not us. And I would work with the deputy. I know we've had some great success with Deputy Morell in that area and the stuff that he's done for farming and agriculture. So I would work together and, exactly as John said, understand the problem, work collaboratively. At the end of the day, we all want Jersey to thrive. We don't want just one community to thrive and another one to fail. And it's all interlinked. And I think the more we collaborate and we work together and in less silos, the more success we will have. And as for the question about making difficult decisions, obviously I can't compete with my colleague here who's made some extremely difficult decisions, but I have run a business for 36 years. I have run it through recessions. I've had to let people go that have got families and mortgages. I've had to make some really tough decisions. So they're emotional decisions, and I think they're the ones that are toughest to make. But when you're making a difficult decision with black and white facts, then they're the easiest ones to make, because you've got to go with the facts and you've got to go with what you find. You sit down together, you have a conversation, and you come to a solution. But you work with your deputies and your senators. You just don't do it in silos. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next with a question? Over there at the back. You'll be getting your steps in today, Deirdre.
Thank you. Excuse me. Mike Hayden, parishioner and former honorary police officer. The honorary police is one of the jewels of Jersey and a very valuable resource in the parish. When I first joined over 20 years ago, there were more than 22 people in the force. We're now down to 8, and that's reflected across the island. What strategies does the candidates have to support recruitment for the honorary police and to enhance their role?
Thank you. So strategies for recruiting to the honorary police and supporting their role. Tina first.
Okay, so that is my field, thankfully. Recruitment is something I've done for 36 years, and I understand volunteers are the backbone of every single parish, absolutely. And the honorary police system is valuable and unique. So we do need to work together, and that's when I made my speech about other parishes working together. So I know St John's did a recruitment drive, so why not join it up together and have a joint effort? Why don't we do a road show? Because people will join when other people are there. They won't join just to be on their own. And from my experience with the recruitment, people really need to know what's involved. So maybe we could just have a road show, get people into the parish hall, take them out on a night to find out what's in the life of an honorary police officer. I mean, we'd have to speak to you guys. You are the experts, but it's understanding the role and working with people and being really good at communication. And I think it's about reaching out to people that you wouldn't normally think, rather than putting an advert out and just waiting for people to apply, maybe identifying people in the parish that you've known through another walk of life that you can go and talk to and say, would you consider being an honorary police officer, and getting them in the fold. And I know that's where St John's have had some success. So I hope that answers your question, but it'd be about working together. But without the honorary police and the volunteers in the parish, we'd have no backbone, and that's so essential to us. Thank you.
Thank you. John.
Thanks, Mike. I absolutely agree, and I'm sure everyone would in this room, that what the honorary police do and the fact that they're a jewel of Jersey and of the parish should go without saying. In terms of a strategy to increase the numbers, funny enough, I've obviously had one or two conversations with people, and I was aware of the level of where the force is at the moment, and obviously that's been something I've been thinking about what we could do. I also had a chat with the stall that was down at the boat show with the honoraries, and interesting enough, they'd had seen some impact from the Channel 103 advertising that was going through that had actually encouraged one or two people to come in. But I think I absolutely agree. I think your fundamental one is getting people to, A, think about it and be aware of it. I think that requires a lot more, and even though I don't particularly like social media, I think there needs to be a lot more coverage going on around there and explaining what people do. And I think the idea of maybe whether it's a roadshow or something along those lines, I think that is absolutely valid. Again, it's about getting the recognition out there and making people understand what it actually involves and what the time commitment is. I do wonder if there's anything to be done about that time commitment in what has become an increasingly busy world, but I don't know what the legal position is on that, and that would be something I'd be very interested in discussing. I absolutely agree. Again, I'd understood that the St John's experience had been that they do basically identify what they think might be some likely candidates and do and try and go for, what's the word, a willing volunteer, as it were, or at least somebody who we've identified and can bring in. And I think that is also part of that strategy. So it's going to be a mixture of things. I think it will require some resource and some time to put into it, but it's going to have to be a priority, not least because I'm not too sure exactly what the legal position is, but there is a point where there must be the capacity of the force and the requirements with the Attorney General, etc., and what the parish has to do. So absolutely agree. We'll work on it, and hopefully we will work it in conjunction with the existing members. Thank you.
Thank you. We're ready for your next question now. Who's itching to ask something? Back there.
Hello, Hayley Dewar, a parishioner. We've talked about the community and lots of volunteering. I'm a scout leader. I've been a scout leader for 32 years. Not in St Lawrence, sorry. But what I want to know from the candidates is what you want to do for our youth in the island. We have an amazing youth service and lots of youth groups. But I do think in St Lawrence we are missing out on lots of youth community events where young people, not necessarily from Scouts, but all across us, can come together. I just want to have an idea of what you think you can do in our community for those young people.
Thank you. So what will you do for the youth of St Lawrence? John?
Again, that's a huge subject, and particularly because of the different age ranges require and would like much more different things. So obviously, on my watch, as it were, the water facility that's been put down at Coronation Park took place, and we also received the very generous donation of the playing fields next to the glass church, which has currently been turned into what's basically been called a pump track. And that's going to appeal to a certain type of individual of differing age ranges, but that is a facility we have in the parish. The question is what you can actually do up this side of the parish, or actually, and either side, it's not just on the borders, as it were, it'll go elsewhere. The other side of it is at the candidates fair that we had up at Holier, or near Holier, at the very start of this campaign. A number of the year 13s, year 12s and 13s that came and spoke to us were talking about just simply having a chill space actually where they could meet, or and something cheap and easy to go to. Now, outside of the parish, Fort Regent is coming through. I'm very pleased to see that happening. Inside the parish, it is again actually seeing what people want. Could we actually get, whether it's a parish thing or whether we just support an organiser, can we get more events happening, whether it's music or something along those lines, I don't know. But it is about bringing a bit more fun into the parish and getting that mix. It's not the same argument, but the engagement I used to see at Battle, which was the grandparents down to the grandchildren, all ages in between. I can see some of those faces here tonight. Or again on the footpath, which was physical stuff, but again through different ages, is trying to get something that's going to appeal across the board. So I don't think it's one size fits all. I do agree we need to do something. And actually, I can think of one or two individuals I met as I was walking around the parish who actually I'd want to bring in and have that discussion and see what we could do.
Thank you. Tina?
Okay, so if you want to do something for somebody and you want to put something out there, the best people to talk to are the people that you're trying to serve. Don't try and come up with something that you think is going to work for them. So the best thing to do is to engage with the young, and young could be ending from toddlers right through to 18, right? So they all want something different. It's about their engagement. If young people are engaged, you will get something from them. When I was young, all we wanted, I mean a long time ago admittedly, but we only just wanted a space to hang out. That's all we wanted. Now, we've spent some time with Peter Clayton up at the youth club just up the road there, the community club, and the football club. So we have got some great stuff going. And you are a stalwart for helping and engaging young people. I know you help me with shoeboxes. So talking to people like yourself, you know how to engage these young people and what they need. And maybe we could have a youth assembly where we'd invite all the young in here and we'd have a brainstorming session and just see, out of all those ideas, what it is that's viable that we can move forward with. But there's no point saying we've put this on for them without engaging them first. And to the point with the honorary police, as these youngsters get older, the more they get engaged with the parish, the more you've got them, and then hopefully they will then engage and become an honorary later on in life. They don't just come for 5 minutes and go. The idea is to connect with them and keep them engaged in the parish. Young farmers is another idea, and keeping those going to the point of the farming question. So I think it's about going out, engaging with them, seeing what it is they want, and then see what we can afford and what we're able to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. Anybody got any questions? At the back there. Is that your second question? Does anybody else want to ask their first question? No? We'll have a think about it and we'll come back to you, because it's going to be a short evening if you don't come up with some more questions. I'm sure you've got some. You've been hearing lots of things that these two want to do. So we'll go to the person who wants to ask his second question.
Steve Pearl, how will you reduce my domestic rates bill?
How would you reduce your domestic rates bill? Right, okay. So domestic rates bill first. Tina.
Okay. Okay, how would you reduce it? Well, I suppose one of the questions would be, what do we spend it on? So what do we spend your domestic rates on, and where do we spend in the parish? And obviously, if we can find somewhere we can save huge amounts of money, St John's, for example, have worked with another parish on their refuge collection and saved 70,000. So if we can do something like that, maybe we can look at the reducing of the rates. But it all depends on what we spend. And the thing is, everybody wants a great service, and they all want the roads swept and all those other things. But actually, reducing that means we reduce the services. But I'm up for looking at where the figures are spent and then coming back to you on that one. Thank you.
Thank you. John.
Thanks for that, Steve. Yes, and oddly enough, I did dig out the parish accounts before I came here, which you'd probably expect as a chartered accountant. I think the trouble is that, and just to be very clear, by the way, I've talked about multi-millions in the past in some of the answers. As an accountant, when I say they're just numbers, the principles apply whether it's something of 10 million or 1 million, roughly, or 100,000. It's the same issues that go, just that the noughts are longer. I think given that where we are at this moment, none of us are going to make any promises, or at least shouldn't make any rash promises about reducing your parish rate. My aim is obviously to keep the rate as low as possible, but providing the services that parishioners require. And we've already heard of two, which may require a small amount of extra expenditure if you want to get more advertising out there for the honorary police, for the sake of argument, or if you want to do something to help the youth. But most particularly, as I've been walking around, and there is a reasonable sum of money in the roads account, for example, but I'll be very happy for the roads committee to enlighten me as to the error of my ways. But I think with all the various road traffic things that have been going on that we're all aware of, certainly looking at the parish roads, there are quite a number of potholes and things like that around that I've noticed as I've been walking. Now, my expectation is that the parishioners will want those repaired. So therefore, I can see some expenditure coming through. Hopefully, we've got the provision for it, but I would want to get those prioritised first before we start trying to reduce the rate. Sorry about that, but that's got to be the priority about doing the services for the parish in as an efficient way. Oddly enough, I don't know if Tina and I have knocked on the same door, but somebody else mentioned me who was in the south of the parish about the arrangement with, I think it's St Helier and the refuse collection. Always interested in knowing if that can be reduced, but I would imagine on the basis we have got a very, I think, good team of people running the parish that I would have thought they would have looked at that already, but it's certainly a discussion one can have. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a new person asking a question.
Emma Paul, parishioner. If you were successful in the role as constable, would you carry on with your current employment or business interests as well as taking the position?
Okay, so would you carry on with whatever you're doing now if you are successful in becoming constable? John?
The short answer in terms of the roles I do currently have, other than fundraising for the air display, which is honorary, another honorary thing I do elsewhere, and I'm chairman of Levo Housing Trust. I've been involved with Levo for 27 years, and I was honorary secretary during the whole pandemic and as chief minister, so I don't see any conflicts in terms of the time requirement that have come through. Other than that, there are no other conflicts that I am aware of in terms of time.
Thank you. Tina?
Okay, so my intention when I put myself forward to stand as Connétable was to do this as a job. So I have, after 36 years, announced to ASL that I will be leaving if I'm elected. Now, they've been very good and said if I'm not elected, they want to have me back in on the Monday morning. So I can't really lose, can I? So the other things that I would keep would be my Rotary work, because it is about community, and I think we could do a lot with the Rotary initiatives that we have within the parish, such as the shoe boxes and some international stuff, and the community work. We've got an open farm day that we could perhaps have done in St Lawrence and made more of. I will be leaving the IOD Shadow Committee that helps youngsters finding shadow work. I will be leaving any of the other employment things, or the Board of Governors at Highlands. I've done my 9 years there, so I'm due to finish that, and I won't be doing anything else. I'm just going to keep the two things. Island of Longevity is an initiative I've been around for about 18 months, and that's all about we're all living longer. We can't now live education, work and retire. We're all living to be 100. Your children and grandchildren are going to live to be 100. We've all got to be wealthy and healthy enough to do that. So there's a lot of work to do within policies, within the government, the social security laws and all sorts of things that will impact. So I'd like to keep that and the Rotary only. And that's because they're community based. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question down here with the hand up.
I've never done this before.
You're doing very well, Deirdre. It can be your next career.
Sheila Cootorange, parishioner. On the health aspect, how could you encourage parishioners to be much healthier in all aspects? I'm involved in natural and complementary health. How can we bring that into to balance the medical world as well? Thank you.
Thank you. Tina first.
Health is a huge issue, and it's for all age groups, and preventative health will save the island a fortune in the long term. Being active and keeping active is so much better for your mental health. So it's not just your physical health, it's mental health. It has to come through the schools, out of the schools, and into the elderly. Use it or lose it is my personal motto. But on the Island of Longevity, we have got Dr. Chris Edmonds, and there's a whole health stream in there. Kate Wright is there as well with her community piece. And actually people that are connected and stay active and keep healthy. Loneliness being the biggest killer. Usually people are lonely, then they eat or they don't go out, and then they become immobile, and then they end up in care. And the other thing around staying healthy longer is that I think moving from when you're getting older, it seems that you go from giving up a house to going into an armchair in an old people's home. There's got to be something in the middle. There has to be something. So people that are in bigger houses could be encouraged to downsize to suitable size houses. But anybody's read the Thursday Murder Club will get the gist. You all have your independent living, and then you have communities where you can go to the gym or there's a library. Because if people are connected, they stay healthier. But preventative health is by far where the investment needs to go. But thank you.
Thank you. John?
Thanks, Sheila. Yes, I must admit, one of the reasons when I started thinking about things, I wanted to go for Connétable was around this whole area of the community. I think the parish is very well run, But I think what we could do around is making our community stronger, and that then has the various benefits that have just been talked about. And I came to it from a variety of angles. Some of it as you look around at perhaps family that are getting older and how they interact and how those requirements change. Then when you speak to older parishioners sometimes about mobility issues, how they get to Le Canoë for the sake of argument if they're not driving. If you look around, as I referenced the kiosk, there's a number of groups down there who meet very regularly, almost every day, and that's their little social group, as it were, and that's quite important. Oddly enough, through the Housing Trust, we see a number of issues which can definitely be around mental health. It can be about reduced income, it can be about hoarding, it can be people with PTSD. So it's how you deal with those type of areas, and a lot of that is about getting people out and interacting in some shape or form with the real world. It could be in very, very small groups, it could be much wider groups. One of the things I went to with my Housing Trust hat on just before Christmas was a place called the Appleby Blue in London, which has just won some major architectural award. You wouldn't build it over here, by the way, but that's about independent living for older people. It is about activities. But if we look at, if I pick on particularly, for example, single men who've had some form of set of circumstances in their life which has led to them being single, they apparently don't tend to interact very well with other groups, and this has been experienced certainly in that area in London. So instead of inviting them to come and have a chat and a coffee, they'll invite them along for an update meeting once a week. So it's things like that about how you approach it to then try and get people to interact and come together. In the wider context, obviously, in terms of, and this isn't what I'll call the type of health that you deal with, Sheila, as far as I'm aware, but it's the wider context of the health side. I think there's a lot more that we should be doing, and we will be seeing coming down the line, where it's that community hub where the parish can act, in my view, as a hub for reaching out and having services provided that people don't have to go into the main hospital for example.
Thank you. We have another question here.
Yes, Sheila Baudin, parishioner. What are your feelings on double taxation?
Could you put your mic a little bit
Sorry.
closer? That's better.
What are your feelings on double taxation? I've worked all my life. I've paid taxes. I've paid Social Security. So my money has been taxed. It's again being taxed now as that I'm getting it as a pension. What are your feelings on this?
So it's particularly double taxation on the old age pension, not double taxation between countries. Okay, John.
Thanks, Sheila. Yes, funny enough, and this is an accountant, I've been actually trying to get my head around it for a while. And originally I'd got to my stance that, well, actually the personal allowance covered the Social Security pension, and therefore that it wasn't a problem. But it was only actually when I was speaking to somebody on the door about probably a week or so ago that I realised the other part of the argument is the fact that actually the income is coming out of something that had already been taxed. And therefore, why are you applying that personal allowance to use up something which has already been paid tax on it? And I have to get my head around that one a bit more. So part of me is sympathetic to it from the perspective of I can start to see the argument that is being run, particularly in times when it's difficult. The other part of me, which is with looking at the state's perspective, is understanding what the implications are. So if it's $500,000 a year extra, then that's a very, in the state's expenditure side of things, that's a very easy manageable amount. If it's, let's be stupid about it, if it's $50 million a year, it's a bit of a different kettle of fish. So, but it doesn't take away the moral argument, as it were, as to what's happening. So the short answer, I think, is where I am, is I've actually now at least identified in my head exactly where the problem, I think, lies, which is the personal allowance being applied to the Social Security pension and not, therefore, being applied to other income which pensioners are receiving. And the argument about that is that the Social Security pension is effectively being taxed out of income that has previously been taxed when you were working. There is a counter-argument to that, by the way, but I don't think we've got time to go into that one, which will be the one that Treasury will run. The other side of it, then, is what are the consequences? I could see something that says, let's try and help those people who are, where this is a serious issue, and maybe one does it by a gradual increase of the personal allowances or something along those lines. But I'm not going to do an on the hoof remark, because it's incredibly complicated, as you can probably gather, and we want to try and solve the problem properly.
Thank you. Tina.
So pensions are not my specialist subject, I'll admit, but there has been knocking on doors. I have been asked that question, and one lady actually called me and asked me to come to her house to talk to me about just that. So I have had a couple of conversations with people that are more informed than I am around pensions, and your employer puts 6.5% in, you put 6% in, so actually you're drawing down your pension from the 12.5 that was been put in. So that's where the pot's made up. So you're not taxed on half, you're not paid tax on half of it because your employers put it in. So that was one explanation that I had. But when it comes to double taxation, I don't truly understand it. And I think because I've been asked it so many times, the idea would be for me to, if I had chance, I would go and ask the Social Security Minister or somebody that can actually, in black and white, explain why it's double taxed and why people think they're double taxation. Because some people say they're not, and some people say they are. So I don't want to give you a waffled answer of a load of rubbish that I'm not 100% sure on. But I think it's something that definitely looks into, because so many people are talking about it. So it's obviously something that people feel. And I don't feel happy if I've paid tax and then I'm taxed again later on. Nobody's happy about being double taxed. So there's got to be a way of working that out and explaining exactly what's what in black and white so that everybody understands, because it's a complicated subject. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next with a tricky question? Over there.
Mark Bingle, parishioner. How do the candidates go about providing first-time buyer housing in the parish? We've heard this evening that we're keen to bring young people on through the honorary system and one thing or another, but if they can't afford to live in the parish, how are we going to entice them in? And so how do you guys feel about taking land from wherever to provide housing, and how would you go about it? Thank you.
Tina first on this one.
Thank you. I mean, I've got children and I've got grandchildren, and I don't want them leaving the island because they can't afford to live here. So I'm right behind that. And I think every single parish has an obligation to find brownfield sites where houses can be built. And I don't think it should be not on our back door and it should be over there or over there. I think there needs to be a concerted effort to find brownfield sites that can be, and has the infrastructure underneath for drainage and all that kind of thing. But one of the crippling things when talking to the young, and I've spoken to a lot of them, is that if they're still living at home, they've got a chance to save. If they're not living at home and they're paying rent, it's the deposits that are actually killing them. Because if they're paying rent, the difference between a rent and actually paying a mortgage isn't hugely different in some spaces. So I think if we can find a way of helping youngsters either get 100% mortgage or not have to find the deposit and pay rent and trying to save and live in a high cost of living, then that might be an answer to one solution to it. But again, we need to, it's more than one answer, because every single parish is suffering. And that's another thing, like the pensions, that's come up on most doorsteps. And maybe right sizing and finding some houses that can be used and made up to more houses. So some houses I visited are sitting on huge plots of land with one person living in it. So, but maybe they don't want to live there on their own. Maybe they do, but maybe that's having those conversations, good old communication. Let's look at the parish, let's look at the sites. How many youngsters do we have that need housing? What numbers are we looking at? But I do think that deposit systems are something that does cripple young people. Thank you.
Thank you. John.
Okay, it's only going to be a part answer because, as we know, it's an incredibly complicated subject. And obviously, cost of housing is a factor for most youngsters over here, and one of the defining choices is whether some of them are staying here or leaving. In terms of one of the factors that comes through is actually the cost of building the properties that are presently being sold. And certainly looking at schemes I've done with housing trusts or looked at trying to build schemes through a housing trust. We can't get the numbers to work at the moment. So for the last 18 months, we've been exploring an alternative. I'm probably going to find out in the next 8 weeks whether we've cracked it or not. And if we have, that will bring our payback down for us from about 32 years to potentially 22 years. That, if that works, will have an impact on the cost of the build. That then feeds into the cost for sale. Housing trusts and Andium aren't profit-driven. They have to make, we have to cover our cost type of thing, and that may be another way of dealing with things. In terms of the deposit side, the Consumer Council made quite an interesting remark, which I've been thinking through as well, and it seems to make sense to me. This is for people who are away and how you at least get them to come back. So it doesn't assist youngsters here. You have to try and make sure they've got the availability. You can do something that covers both sides. But the argument ran, well, look, if people aren't coming back, how about you bring them back and you give them essentially a tax holiday for a period of time because you're not losing any money, and that money can go into putting a deposit aside. Now, I don't know what that looks like because I'm the type of person who likes to work out the detail from that perspective. But to me, that means putting some form of package together with money that's money that we wouldn't get because they wouldn't be coming to the island, and seeing if that would also be part of making it attractive. However, that's to get people coming back into the island. For me, I think the fundamental one is the cost of the properties, how you deal with that for the people on island. The other side of it, I still quite like, although I never received it, the principles behind the old states loan system. That is difficult these days because of the capacity and things like that. Andium packages do offer various discounts, but sometimes it's complicated to actually get hold of them. And I think actually just to go to location, I'm very much in favour of brownfield sites, but there will be a discussion that would have to be had around the height that you build them out at. Because they're old brownfield, they're probably going to be lower than you would ultimately need to put more people on them. Hope that helps.
Thank you. Who's next? Right round the other side, Deirdre.
Mike Hayden. Jersey's got a great track record of supporting overseas development. There's a lot of funding that's gone on since the Red Cross support after the occupation. There's some great programs going on now. For example, the Jersey Cow with Jersey Dairy in Africa. There's conservation livelihoods supported by Durrell in Madagascar. Lots of Jersey people have had the experience of volunteering in overseas countries. But there's a great deal of questioning these days about what overseas aid development is all about, and the funding is under pressure. I'd be interested in the candidates' views on Jersey Overseas Aid and support for that programme.
So what are your views on our overseas aid projects and the programme that's currently underway? John.
To be very clear, I absolutely support our present overseas aid programme. When I was Chief Minister, we had the discussion with Carolyn Labby and increased the contributions and put a formula in place. I think it was on a percentage of GVA or something. And actually during COVID, even though that dropped, we were able to maintain the level of support we put in place. For me, because we come from a small island, which a lot of the world thinks is palm trees and banks, having an overseas aid programme is part of what you might say counters the arguments around that image, which is, for me, fundamentally flawed anyway. And actually, it is also about helping people far worse off than ourselves. The Dairy for Africa programme that Mike particularly referenced is something I've been very, very keen on since probably I first came across it in 2013. Broadly speaking, African cow, depending where you are, produces 1 litre of milk a day, roughly. If you cross it with the Jersey breed, which is the second biggest dairy herd in the world, you get between 12 and 16 litres of milk. That's about bringing people out of poverty. That is about actually giving them something they can sell. That may be about educating the first child in the family. I was at somewhere last year, met somebody from Rwanda. When he heard I was from Jersey, he really could not get over it that that I was from an island that effectively hadn't quite saved his life, but had really made such a turning point in that country. So, and actually that program has been rolled out now to, I think it's Malawi, Zambia, Nepal. I was responsible for getting an extra $1 million into Ethiopia, and it is really something that we should really be proud of. I do not think we should be in any shape or form reducing those funds. Thank you.
Thank you. Tina.
Jersey's overseas aid is an important part of Jersey doing its bit for everybody else in the world that's not as well off as we are. So that's in principle, I completely agree with it. I did an overseas aid trip many years ago. I saw the Jersey cow. I saw the village prospering because they had a cow producing more milk. I saw the polio inoculation, and I saw all in practice. And the thing I like about the Jersey Overseas Aid is we're not putting a sticking plaster on something. We're putting money, and that's going and making improvements in people's lives. And Rotary actually work with Jersey Overseas Aid, and we give 2 bursaries a year for a young person who can afford to go travelling or see the world, so they can go on one of those overseas aid trips, because travelling is really good for the young people. I learnt a lot, and I was 50 at the time. So when the youngsters go, and they go on these 3 weeks, and they see how other people live, they come back here and they're better for it. So in principle, I really agree with it. I absolutely have to admit, and I don't know the budget, but and I'm happy to look into that. But in principle, I really agree with it. I wouldn't expect us to give any more at the moment because we've got other things to spend money on. But I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else with a burning question? Over here. I think they wait to see where you are, Deirdre, and then somebody on the other side of the room puts their hand up.
Hello, Stephen Cayu. Margaret Thatcher, lover or hater, she said that the government was there to legislate for the benefit of the people, not for its own self-bloatedness. Do you think recent decisions of the government are self-satisfying for the government, or do you think they've really been done to help the general population?
So, Tina,
for example, paving over Broad Street.
So this is particularly about government, yeah, being government spending. Is government overblown and bloated rather than doing things for the people?
Okay, so that's a tough one because every department's got its own budget. But from the locals looking in, I would say if you're running a household and you've got money coming in and you've got bills to pay and there's a big bill come in but you want a brand new car, you're not going to have that brand new car off you because you've got bills to pay. So in practical, in my little brain thinks you don't spend more than you can afford. So I understand what you're saying about Broad Street and other things. It would seem silly that they make these decisions in silos, and it would seem when we're going through a cost of living crisis where we've got the price of everything going up like Billio and your weekly shop going up, that they're actually paving a street that maybe could have waited for a few years until there was some more money to be had and prioritising it. But once they sign these budgets off, it would seem that that's it. It just rolls ahead and nobody puts the brakes on. So yes, it's a difficult one to answer without being in politics at the moment. But from when you look at it, from a simple view of spending stuff on and doing up a street, when you've got Highlands College with leaking roofs and students trying to learn, it's really hard to rectify that in your head as to why that's happening. I'm a governor at Highlands College, and I've sat in classrooms when it's been raining and there's a bucket catching water, and they're our future. But we've got a lovely Broad Street. But there you go.
Thank you. John?
It's always easy to pick out the individual ones and make a case as to why something shouldn't be spent. And that is the difference actually between, let's call it a business approach versus the government approach. However, in principle, I do agree with you, Steve, from the point of view of A, prioritisation of expenditure, and B, taking out waste. So I do support proper investment in St Helier, because if you don't do it, it'll start looking shabby, the whole thing will deteriorate, and then we have a problem. So that is about investing in the island. Equally, and I'm going to, when I say blow my own trumpet to an extent, that's what we're here for, isn't it? The waste that we did take out, I think there is more to go. For example, the shiny new office block down at where Cyril Markle used to be, I do claim credit for that. It was a project I was trying to do for over 10 years. More than 10 years ago, we thought it would save 10 million a year. So the frustrations and the blockages that came through from senior politicians and senior management at the time basically means that we wasted, or the government wasted £100 million of your money and my money by not doing that. If you look at the pension refinancing that we did, where we were turned out we were paying, I think it was between 5 and 6% at the time that rates were down at 2. So we did a refinancing exercise, and over 100 years that will save us over £3 billion. So the point about that is it's slightly negative now, i.e. There's an extra million required, an extra £500,000. It's about neutral now, and it will start going into negative and making savings. In the first 20 to 30 years, it will save 300 million. I've talked about the litigation one. And in the past, we've reprioritised about 65 million a year out of the state's budget. So in principle, I absolutely agree that we should be reprioritising expenditure at the right point. The particular example, I'm afraid, I'd like to know what it costs actually at the moment, but it is about investing in St Helier and making that environment better. As a principle, strip the waste out, absolutely.
Thank you for that question. Who's next with a question? Down the middle here.
Henry Cottage, former constable. Why should constables remain in the States? It's a great priority. What do you think?
So, should constables remain in the States, or why should they? So that's John first. Should they remain? John?
In short, yes. From my point of view, I fundamentally support the constables in the States on the basis that one of the things that I love about Jersey is the parish system and the community it generates. And for me, having the constables in the States, there's always the comment about hopefully you've got common sense individuals who are practically meeting. In fact, under the present system, the Connétable is probably the one who's going to meet more often individuals directly linked with the parish rather than anybody else. And so that gives them that direct feedback to feed that into the debates and the decisions that they may or may not be involved with. The other side of it is if the constables aren't in the States, it will be natural human behaviour. It's not meant to be nasty, it's just natural human behaviour that someone somewhere in central government will turn around and say, we can do X or we can do Y. And perhaps we could centralise the parish rate system, for example. And that means that then starts putting on the line, that slippery slope, down to what happens to to property rates in the UK, which are stratospherically higher than what we pay over here. And bear in mind, the parish rate is the only democratic tax we have over here because parishioners vote on it each year. So for me, the Connétable being in the States, they do have to, in my view, play an active role, and we are seeing that change over the last few years. Whether it is on scrutiny or in the ministerial side, there are two ministers who are constables at the moment. There are, I can't remember in terms of scrutiny chairs, they do have to play an active role to make that role relevant. But I do think for supporting what I hold dear in terms of our parish and our community, it is critical that they remain there, and hopefully we'll see that carrying on for a long time.
Thank you. Tina?
Okay, so I think we do belong in the States, but I think also the Committee to Connétable's chair sits on the Council of Ministers. So the Council of Ministers have already got the voice of the constables. And I think the constables work together. We could be an absolute powerhouse to challenge what's happening in our parishes within the larger assembly, because we're all going to vote people in. I'm allowed to vote as well. There'll be 49 people in the House, and somebody said to me the other day, she's loved everybody knocking on her door because she's never seen so many people or heard so many people, and then she knows that on the 8th of June she's not going to see anybody. And that's the role of the constable, to keep that connection with the parishioners, meet with the committee to Connétable, share ideas. We're all going to have similar challenges within our parishes, and if we share our ideas, we're a stronger voice going into the States than we are sitting there on our own worrying about our own parish. We need to work collectively, because collectively there's power, and the committee to Connétable is where that power is, and I think that's where we can challenge and we can argue, because we know what's going on the ground, because we're in the parish every day. So I think if we're not attached to that, then we're not going to be as informed. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next with a question? Down the front, Deirdre. Oh, hang on. Deirdre, I saw this gentleman first, and then we'll go to up there afterwards, okay?
Good evening. Sorry. Can you hear me? Right. Peter Marinell, St Lawrence parishioner. An important role of Connétable is to act as trustee over our traditions and heritage. As a 6th generation target shooter, this heritage is nearly 200 years old, and I'm not unique. 3 of 30 current rifle places in British shooting's junior Olympic pathway are won and held by Jersey girls, inspiring many others to be the best person they can be. But we face a real risk that suggested restrictions mean that Paige, Libby and Kaya will be our last such ambassadors, because our dreamers will be denied the local freedoms to train and compete as their peers enjoy in the UK and overseas. Question: if chosen to represent St Lawrence, do you value our traditions and heritage sufficiently to ensure our parishioners aged 8 to 80 plus retain the right to their dreams and aspirations by participating in a safe and rewarding sport?
So, Tina, you're first to answer that one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Everybody needs to be connected to something, and everybody needs to enjoy something, whether it be rifle shooting, whether it be horse riding, whether it be rally car driving, whatever it is, everybody needs to connect to a passion that they've got. And I know that we spoke at Oakfield, and you told me a wonderful story about how you turned the life around of a young person who was gone off the rails and nobody could do anything with, and the respect of using the rifle and the everything that went with it, you turned that person's life around. So, and again, you're a volunteer. So without the volunteers, that wouldn't happen. So yes, our heritage is everything, isn't it? And we're making history now, and our children and grandchildren will talk about the history that we're making, and anybody and everybody should be able to access that. Does that answer your question? Yes. So whatever age, they should be allowed to do it. You've obviously got risk assessments and stuff. You're not going to let somebody go nuts with a gun, are you? And go, oh, you know, you're a sensible man that runs a sensible club, so you know the rules and you know how to run it. So there needs to be some mutual respect and allow you to do what you know best. Thank you.
Thank you. John?
Short answer is yes. The longer answer is, in case people don't know, I've been a shooter since I was about the age of 14, so I'm fully aware of many of 2-2 rifle. I've represented the parish on the island at various points during my younger days, although I did shoot for the parish not terribly well about 4 weeks ago, I think. I think what I've seen, though, is that obviously there is a PR exercise sometimes, because unfortunately people think of guns and think of America, and we get into a very tricky territory there. Over here, it is a sport, it is a skill, and it is something that when I've seen people through, particularly, as you say, the youngsters, it is something that, particularly if you're not necessarily, I was never into cricket or football or rugby, for example, it's something you can excel at without necessarily being the most sporty of individuals. It's very, very good for concentration, things like that. In terms of aspiring, Peter's covered on the number of people and the level they are shooting at. If you go back further, we've had gold and bronze medals at the Commonwealth Games. That is something that, you know, somebody over here with relatively just a lot of effort and has got expertise training in all the clubs actually generally across the island can actually aspire to be at the top end on the globe. I can think of somebody who we rather pull his leg on when a bad shoot for him is 199 out of 200. That is the kind of skill set you're going for. So, short answer is yes. Longer answer is we also had the conversation at the Candidates Fair and what you're looking for in terms of facilities and things like that. Absolutely wanting to help and hopefully will be helping on it. And I think the legislation is a separate issue that's coming down the line. And that, again, needs a fairly thorough looking at and an understanding of it. I won't go into that right now. I've seen bits of it, and the bits of it I see didn't quite make sense, but I've only seen an element of that legislation. Anyway, as I said, yes.
Thank you. There is somebody with their hand up a bit further back that you saw, Deirdre. Who was it? It was over there.
Hayley Dewar from Parishioner. We've talked quite a lot about community and getting involved and things like that. I just want to know from the candidate's point of view, so on June the 8th, whoever sits in the office and over the way, what is your plan to then get involved back in the community and not to lock yourself in the office? And how do you involve your deputies, the elected people as well? So how is everyone going to get involved? You've obviously all been very busy knocking on doors and having cups of tea and finding out what's going on, but I know Tina just said after that day, all those people may not be contacted again. So I just want to know what your views are on how you want to be out daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, however that might be. Not just a Christmas party.
So how will you involve the community and also work with the deputies of the parish? John, first.
I lost track. The short answer is that I've actually been running a small list as I've been going around the parish of what I think are some key individuals across who may bring experience across certain areas that they specialise in, which to me could then start forming a core as to how we then reach out across the rest of the parish. That's the starting point. In terms of working with the deputies, absolutely. When I was a deputy and with Deirdre, either as Connétable or as deputy, we worked very closely either with Geoffrey or Deirdre and I think it was Eddie Knoll to address the parish issues. Parish and community and the deputies, they're already talking about working better together across the district, and that is an absolute no-brainer because it's that usual thing. As a group, you can spread the load, you can bring your individual skill sets to it, and so my first point, whether it be the Monday the 8th, that might be a recovery day, but or meeting people in the office if you choose me, or re-meeting people in the office and going through the details. However, very shortly thereafter, I think it's a case of reaching out and bringing a small group together, and then from that acorn, hopefully, larger things can grow.
Thank you. Tina.
So that point that lady made really resonated with me, and I was like, absolutely. I mean, there's all these deputies, all these senators all knocking on a door, and then there's John and I probably straight behind knocking on the doors as well. So that does mean that they've enjoyed the communication. So we need to look at communication. I think if elected, the 8th, I would definitely come in and speak to the team because they must be wondering who they're going to get and not knowing what's happening to them. So the first people to talk to will be the fabulous team in the office. After that, who the deputies will be, and that would be to speak with them and to get them here and say, how are we going to do this communication? Because the what's okay. We can all talk about the what we need are solutions and the how. So it's how we're going to do it. So it's a case of me not making, if it was me, I'm not going to sit here and go, we're going to do this. It's about the deputies that get in, let's get them in. The guys in the office know the parishioners better than anybody because they're in the front line every day. And actually getting people up to the parish hall. Everybody that I've spoken to always emailed me with specific problems from potholes to dog poo to anything and everything. I've made a list of those people and I will make sure that I call them all that week to say that I've been elected, and whilst I can't promise to do something immediately, that I've actually not just ditched them because I've been elected. So and that's one of the things I really want to do. And then again, it'll be the community group. And when I spoke to the parish staff, we talked about community connection. And there's quite a lot of people that would actually like to come to stuff, but people aren't very good at asking for help. So I noticed that as well, you know, oh, you're not here and you're here on your own. Would you like to come to the coffee morning? Well, I don't like to bother anybody. What about if somebody came to fetch you? Well, that might be quite nice. So in case of just going and saying we're going to do this, let's go out and look at the how as well. Yeah? Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else with the next question? Yes, I think we've moved on to second questions now. But anybody who wants to ask their first question is very welcome.
Hello again. What do the candidates think about possibly returning to a deputy system where the deputies elected in their own parish rather than in constituencies? Because it seems to have completely destroyed people's interest in politics totally, because you're not voting for somebody from your own parish. You might end up with nobody from your own parish who's actually elected in your, well, we will here, because obviously we've got 2 candidates from the parish, but it seems to have kind of completely alienated people from the desire to vote and also to stand for election, because you're not in your own parish. So if you stand in St Lawrence, you've got to talk to people, those awful people from Trinity and those awful people from St John. So, you know, would you advocate going back to a parish system, or do you think you'd carry on with the way things are?
Thank you for that question. Tina?
What do I think? I think that each deputy will have come from one of the parishes. We've got 2, obviously, this time, but I think the districts, if we're going to work together and be more efficient, if we work just in our parish, we're in the danger of being in a silo. So I think it's still, I'm interested to see why you feel the deputies have put people off voting specifically. I think a lot of it is that when I'm speaking to people, they don't feel their voices are heard. So they say everything at election time and everybody promises anything. They get in, they get elected, and then they don't feel that their voices are heard. That's what I'm hearing on the doorsteps. So I think it's down to communication and ensuring, and if I was elected, one of the first things I would do is to talk to the other 2 constables to say, how are we going to improve communication? I mean, we could be doing road shows. They have to represent 3 parishes, but 1 a quarter in here, if you know it's coming up and we advertise it properly, or they could come into the parish and say, next time you see your deputy, I want to know about this, and we make sure that communication's tightened up, because I think everybody gets so busy that everybody gets wrapped up in everything that's going on, and time goes by and then the communication's dropped. And I think communication's completely underestimated how powerful it is, and the more regular you do it, the better that everybody is informed. So I think that's what we need to do. Going back to 1 parish and 1 constable would just give that silo. That's my view. Thank you.
Thank you. John?
Short answer is I don't like the district system. Actually, almost deliberately, on the back of my leaflet, you'll see there's a red box, and that's what I did as parish deputy. And so you sit on the Committee Parish Hall, you're part of the municipality. The Committee Parish Hall looks at, for example, the accounts. Now, as I understand matters, and there were 2 of us on at the time, with Edinal and myself, nowadays, it's if the deputy is in the parish, they'll be included on it, but if they're from St John's, they probably won't be. So you're starting to lose that connection, and I think that's the point. The whole beauty of the parish system and having that deputy in there is about getting to know people. It's about the ability that you then start recognising them, and you see them in the supermarket or whatever it is, and you can pass on that remark. I think with the district, it's becoming almost like a mini senatorial side, as it were. And it becomes harder to actually hold those individuals necessarily, when I say to account, because actually they're now suddenly dealing with 3 times the size of the population. Now, mathematically, by the way, I can understand the logic. I didn't vote for it. But actually it seems to have missed the human element. And so, and it's more than that, because it's things like the visit to Broncages, the visit royales. It's those bits which are those sort of unquantifiable events and things you get involved in that then give you a better understanding of where we come from, of the identity of the parish. The silo bit is actually in one's mind in terms of when I was deputy and we were dealing with one issue to do with traffic from the west, we got all the deputies from all the parishes west of here and slightly north, as it were, and got them all in the room, because you get to know them obviously in assembly, and we work together on those issues. So you can work together. You'll find that actually one finds that the assembly is actually relatively collegiate, and if you get the right people, you can work together on dealing with individual problems according to who you need to work with. But the fundamental one to me is having the deputy as the parish deputy. I think we have lost something from my past experience as a parish deputy to what I now understand how the districts are operating. With the Connétable position, I would very much want to see us working closely with the district deputies. I have to say I would prefer to see a return to the parish deputies.
Thank you. Who's next? Where should we send Deirdre? Over here. Oh, so we'll go to the gentleman in the green shirt and then we'll come back to the gentleman on the front row.
Alan Murray, parishioner. It's really a follow-up question. Given the challenges that Ireland has, are we really talking about getting the states, when they're back together, the 49 of them, going back and deciding whether we should have another run through of how we should elect our members and doing their own business with ourselves? I mean, I want to know what the candidates feel about that, because going back, the view of the island generally would be one of, here we go again, they're doing their own business with themselves, rather than getting on and solving the problems for the island.
So you're asking about whether they should have another look at how the states are run.
Can you see that as, do the candidates see that as a priority?
Okay.
Is the core issue?
So do you see that as a priority? John first.
Funny enough, as I was finishing my answer, I thought the trouble is we end up talking about ourselves yet again. I have been through a lot of debates and non-events around constitutional reform. And the other challenge, of course, is that you've then got to see, has it got a reasonable chance of getting through? It would not be at the top end of my list, I have to say. However, I'd make the point, if somebody brought a proposition through, I would probably be supportive of it, because I think what's happened in terms of our community. So although we can wish not for somebody to bring a proposition, that's not in our control. It would not be something that I would actively be going out unless, you get a special assembly of the, I can't remember what you call it, but a special assembly of the parish to actually direct that to happen. That's a different kettle of fish.
Thank you. Tina.
So this is my first time in the assembly, so I actually haven't sat in there to experience it. But what I would say is that you're talking about picking a minister from everybody when... No, is that not what you... No, sorry. Can you just...
I think he was talking about re-debating how the States Assembly should be structured.
I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon. So I don't know at the moment because I haven't experienced it. So it's something I'd like to sit in there and see. But, yeah, I'm sorry. I don't have a full answer for you. But I'd love to... Alan, you and I have had long chats about lots of things. But I can't sit here and say, yes, I know all about the Parish Assembly and how it's all structured. I know how politics works. But, yeah, I'd like some more detail on that, myself personally, to be able to give you a better answer.
Thank you. Next question is down on the front row.
Hi, this is just a very quick follow-up because I couldn't get it all out the first time. So we talked about centralisation.
Mic a bit closer to your mouth.
We talked about centralisation or decentralisation of the continuing controls by the Connétable and the parish within its own community. Since 1867, our 3 pieces of legislation have been for firearms control and issuance has been a parochial constable Connétable issuing authority. Do you feel that it should remain as such, or whether it should be centralised to a government body?
So Tina's answering this one first. Should it be constable-led or central?
It's interesting you should ask. I don't shoot a gun, and I don't know a great deal about guns, so am I the best person to sit and issue a licence? So as it is the constables at the moment that do it, but they do go and speak to the police station who do a check, and then they come back to the constable who then has another conversation with the individual and issues the licence or something along that way. For me personally, I don't feel that I'm experienced. I don't shoot a gun. I don't know anything about guns. I would feel that the police are better placed to issue that and then let the parish know who's got a gun within that parish, rather than that to and fro between the police and the parish. John might have a different view, being a gunman himself, but I'm not, and that's something I wouldn't want to do from day one. If elected, somebody comes along and asks for a gun licence, and I sit there and have a merry old chat with him and go, well, he seems like a nice chap, absolutely no problem. I don't think I'm equipped to do that. I would need some training on that. But I do think the police they've got the database, they know, but we know the parishioners. So maybe still that blended approach. But thank you.
Thank you. John?
I think the role of Connétable, there's going to be a few difficult decisions that we're going to have to deal with. One is firearms, and it will be interesting if I get in being on the other side of the table, because I think the process I've been through when renewing the licence has been reasonably robust, but have been, from my experience, have been very fair. I don't particularly like centralisation, because I think it's that one step further away from the individuals that we're dealing with. But for example, if you've got to deal with really difficult decisions, the one I don't particularly look forward to is taking somebody's driving licence away, because that in itself is another one that is a difficult issue you've got to deal with. So there's going to be difficult decisions. I don't think it's actually about the type of weapon you're dealing with, the type of gun. It's actually assessing the individuals and making sure you've got a process which has been well run for a very long time that does identify those people well. You obviously will take advice from whether it's the honorary police or the state's police or other individuals, and that's part of the process. But I think it is important. Otherwise, you go back to the point I was alluding to earlier, which is that slow centralisation of every parish function and slowly reducing and diminishing the role of the parish, and that starts hitting our community.
Thank you. Do we have any first questions from anybody? Any second questions from anybody? Any follow-up questions? Oh, here we go.
Forgetting what's happened in the last week with the schools being off and we're having a heat wave, have you noticed that at 10:30 every day the beaches are dead? Everybody comes off the beach with their dogs. There might be raining, but it's only us stupid people with dogs who would want to go on the beach with a dog, but we're not allowed to. What are your feelings on this?
So it's John to answer first. What about the dog walking rules?
I don't have a dog anymore, very sadly, but my mother used to, and we obviously used to in the past, and my mother also used to be involved, or is still involved with horses, and they are same equally difficult rules that come through the two. And the reason I mention that is, firstly, I'd like to see some consistency on the beach usage between dogs and horses, and I think there are certainly times where, because I believe there is a difference, and I think the second one is I would be certainly open. You're not the only one who's made that point to me, by the way. I mean, it's the first time you've made it here, but other people have made that point to me, that there is scope for changing those parameters potentially, or some people have called for a dog walking beach effectively. Not too sure if I go for that or not, because I don't know how that works in terms of the context of Jersey, although there may be some areas you can find out. It's about actually, can you let the dog off the lead at a different time? To me, there does seem to be scope outside the summer school holidays particularly, where you could make that change, because as you say, rightly I think, certainly if you look at St Albans, there are times between that 10:30 slot, particularly the weekdays, when there's not very many people on that beach at all, and it feels like a wasted opportunity. That's not a guarantee from the point of view, but that is my thought process. There may be some counter-arguments I'm not aware of, which I'd like to know. So, in principle, I agree with exactly what you're saying, and I'd be very willing to look at it. I believe, I know it was raised in the past, by the way, and I'd always understood there may be some issues at the Comité de Connétable, I don't know, but that would be my first port of call to see where we are.
Thank you. Tina.
I've got 2 dogs and I spend a lot of time walking them on the beach. Sometimes I've got 4. I'd agree with you. Sometimes I'm down there and I'm the only person down there. I think there is some flexibility in the day, times it starts, the month it starts and the month it finishes. But 10:30 seems to be a little early and nobody really goes to the beach at 10:30. And I think if people are sensible, you're not going to be up by the wall where people are sunbathing anyway, are you? You're going to be right down the bottom of the beach where people aren't with young children, because if you've got a dog rather than the beach, then if they're building sandcastles, it can be a bit embarrassing. But I think there's some flexibility. I think the one beach argument wouldn't please everybody, because if you're at Gorey and the beach chosen happens to be at the other end of the island, then that's not going to suit everybody, depending on mobility, etc. But I do think there's some flexibility in it. But as John says, I completely agree. I don't know all the other arguments that would go for it. But I agree, the same with horses and dogs. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a question over there in the stripy top. Wait.
Thank you, Miss Stripey Top again. Just picking up actually on Sheila's comment with regards to dogs. It's actually more about horses, as we do ride horses quite extensively throughout the parish, and there is a huge equestrian community in the parish. I'd just like to know your thoughts really on road restrictions or speed restrictions, because the speed of cars, especially through the back lanes, is ridiculous and it's extremely dangerous. So much so that a lot of us actually do film. We wear cameras now because of the danger, not just to us obviously, but for people who walk dogs or pedestrians on the back lanes. Have you any thoughts or plans to look or re-look at the speed restrictions within the parish, especially on the small lanes?
Thank you. So that's speed restrictions on the small lanes. And Tina first.
I completely see your view. I walk the dogs around the lanes and I meet horses very often. St Lawrence has got lots of horses. I meet Lucia quite often with her horses. Cars go too fast. And at the end of the day, it's not just the rider that's in danger, it's the animal too that's being ridden. So I don't know what the answer is. The 15-mile-an-hour lanes are 15 mile an hour, but people come round corners and it says 15. So you're going to expect dog walkers. Well, you should be expecting dog walkers. You should be expecting horses. That's why they're 15-mile-an-hour lanes. And people on bicycles. So I've been around on my bike canvassing around St Lawrence, and I've had a couple of near misses coming down to corners, and people have whipped around the corners, and I've had to duck into a hedge or something. What the answer is, I don't know. Boy races and people flying around are a problem anyway, especially on the main roads. It's 15 mile an hour. I don't know if we can make them any slower, or just make lanes or open more bridle paths. Apparently we've got a lot more bridle paths than we know about, so I don't know where those are. Maybe they need to be explored and to be reopened again, so that we're off the roads and it's safer.
Thank you. John.
Short answer is yes. I don't ride. We know that. We've had that discussion. Obviously, members of my family did, and they've commented on the illnesses they've had in the past, which has not been much fun. It isn't just horses and cyclists. There's even children on their way to school. It was pointed out to me in one estate south of here, not too far away, where it's a 40 mile an hour right outside on what I always thought was a green lane, actually. And so getting to the bus stop for them is hazardous. So short answer, yes, I'd be very happy to look at the areas where there are issues. I do support the Green Lane structure. That doesn't mean necessarily I apply that to a blanket thing across the parish, but on a motorway in the UK again. But no, as a concept, absolutely. Tina made the reference to the bridle paths, etc., and I do actually agree with that. I think there is scope, frankly, my footpath experience. I would love to see a project where we did expand the network of both bridle paths and footpaths across parish and wider. If you look on the information board down the valley, which I A, dug the holes for, and B, wrote most of it, you'll find the map that we linked where we can get from basically Fern Valley down St Clair onto the Waterworks Valley, up Moor Misere, across the down the Chemin de Moor, and you get across the underground hospital. And we, having done it a few times in the past, you see 2 cars in about 3 hours. You suddenly hit the main road, and it's a different kettle of fish, as we know. Actually, post-COVID recovery, we put some money aside for expansion of footpaths, and actually some of that money, for example, I believe, led to the extension of the cliff path up by La Fontaine pub, and some of the other bits and pieces have occurred in both St One's and St Peter's. So as a concept, I would very much like to see A, the speed restriction reduced, but I think a number of areas where we can actually get people, horse riders, maybe even cyclists, that depends, off the roads to keep them away from the cars. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? Over there, Deirdre.
Bruce Thomas, 10 years in the youth service and 10 years in the honorary. And my business is in St Lawrence. I want your opinion on the amount of millionaires we are letting into the island. I live in between 2. One house is owned by people in Leeds. They've been 3 times this year. I want to know what benefit they are to the island. Each visit was no more than a week, just to tell their gardeners what to do. The other property was sold for about 3 million. 4 years work on it, upsetting the neighbourhood. It's now up for sale for 20 million. Who can afford a house but an outsider? What benefit are these millionaires to the island, please?
Okay, thank you. First to answer this one is John. What benefit are millionaires to the island?
So the short answer is I do support the wealthy residents and bring them to the island. However, they do need to make a contribution to the island, and that's got split into 2 ways. One is the financial contribution, and one is beyond that. The financial contribution, I've forgotten the exact amounts, but I think it's a minimum of 250,000 a year, which is higher than what it used to be. And I do think there is a benefit there. The other side of it is what let's call it the philanthropic and communal support. So, for example, I do fundraising for the air display, and there are a number of individuals who do put some money aside, and that is part of their general support. There are obviously individuals, for example, who gifted the land next to the Glass Church, which again is a donation that's of direct benefit to our community. However, I agree with you, number one is they should be complying with all the legislation things that we would do. And secondly, I would like to see them playing active parts, if we can, in our community. I think provided that is the case, then I would absolutely continue to welcome them. The issues around the house prices and things like that, I got a lot of sympathy for, but they tend to be, certainly from my point of view, they're out of that price range anyway due to the nature of those properties. They do make a financial contribution that is reported on from time to time. I can't remember the exact amount, what it is now, but it is a case of that we do keep trying to get more funding and more support out of them to put to the benefit of the island. So I think that's probably all I can say, but in relation to the specific issues you've had, I'm sympathetic with your perspective and the issues that you're trying to deal with.
Thank you. Tina.
Okay, I agree with a lot of John's comments. These people come across, the fact that they leave the house empty and only come here for a short amount of time. I can imagine looking at a beautiful big house like that and it's sitting empty when we've got people looking at properties is a difficult pill to swallow. But they do contribute a great deal to the island. I've had a lot of conversations with business people. They bring businesses with them as well. So they don't just pay their personal tax. They bring a lot of investment companies and funds companies with them, and which they pay tax on and employ people. There's an argument about how many we should have and how big a house they should have and how much land they should have with it. In fact, I believe that Steve Morgan has just moved to our parish and bought the most expensive house in Jersey at some eye-watering amount. Let's just hope that now he's in our parish, if elected, I will be knocking on his front door to find out what he's going to do with the donation that they have to make, because they're obliged to make it a payment each year for philanthropic events of their choice. But if they don't know what's going on in our parish, how can we make sure that we get some of that? So the ones that we've got in our parish, if elected, I will be knocking on their door to engage them in parish life. And maybe then, if they choose to put that money into the parish, we can do all the lovely stuff with the youth and the gun club and all that kind of thing. So I think that's the way we need to use it, and that's the way we could utilise them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else thought of any questions that they want to ask the candidates? No? Well, are you two happy to wrap up now? Because I'm not allowed to ask questions, much as I might like to. Okay, so we'll wrap up now, I think. If you're sure there's no more questions, because we do have another just 10 minutes if you would like to use that. But I'm sure the candidates will be happy to come down and talk to you individually if we're going to stop doing the kind of formal part of the questions. So thanks for your questions, and thanks for coming along, and thank you to the candidates for their answers. And thanks also to the tech team up at the back there, the parish team who've helped, to Deirdre for running around with the microphone, and to everyone else who's helped to organise tonight's event. If you'd like to get in touch with any of your candidates, not just for Constable, but also for Deputy and Senators, you can find their contact details on the vote.je website and in the booklet that you were all sent over the last couple of weeks. If you applied for a postal vote, your ballot papers need to be with the judicial graph by noon on Sunday the 7th. And your last chance to vote early at St Paul's Centre in town is on Monday morning. They're open from 8:45 until noon, so don't go in the afternoon, only in the morning. Other than that, it's Sunday the 7th. On election day, polling stations are open from 8 till 8, and please remember to take photo ID with you. And I think John wanted to say a few words.
I just wanted to say to all of you, thank you for coming along and putting us through our paces. I'm sure Tina feels the same as well. And most particularly to Deirdre for doing the microphone for the camera crew at the back, one of whom reminded me the last time he saw me, which was in a closed room for about a year. And most importantly, can I say thank you to Kathy for hosting this so admirably well. And I look forward to her seeing her tomorrow morning when she does her 12K run and has the slice of cake at the end of it. But thank you very much, Kathy. Okay, well done.
Thank you very much. Good night.